This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can find all the cards in this video in their store by using the links in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Ixalan, and it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Today, we're going to look at Magic's newest card type, Battle. This type was introduced in March of the Machine, a set involving the Phyrexians invading virtually every plane in the multiverse. Most of the game's planes got a battle as a result. So far, all the battles have the Siege subtype. Battles are double-faced cards. On the front side, they have some sort of effect, usually an Enter the Battlefield ability. Invasion of Belanon, for example, gives you a 2/2 Knight token. Battles also have a defense value. On Invasion of Belanon, this is 5. You lower the defense of a battle by damaging it with spells or attacks, and once the value reaches 0, you cast the other side of the battle for no mana. Invasion of Belanon becomes Belanon War Anthem, which gives +1/+1 to your whole board. Battles take a little bit of work, but if you can transform them, they often give you insane value for your investment. There's been enough time since the release of March of the Machine that I thought it would be interesting to see where battles stand right now. Overall, battles have been fairly successful. 17 of the 36 that were printed in March of the Machine have at least one Premier Event Top 8, and many of them are seeing multi-format success. At the same time, none of them appear to be completely busted either. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first-tier top 8 is worth 2 points. This includes events like Pro Tours, and a second-tier top 8 is worth 1 point. This includes events like Regional Championships. Alright, let's take a look at Magic's top 10 battles. At number 10, it's Invasion of Tolvada. For 3 generic, a white, and a black, it's a 5 defense battle, and when it enters the battlefield, you can reanimate a non-battle permanent from your graveyard. Once you lower its defense to 0, it becomes the Broken Sky, an enchantment that gives all of your creatures +1/+0 and lifelink, and makes a 1/1 flying spirit token at the end of your turn. This battle gives you nice value up front, adding something to your board, provided you have something in your graveyard. It's really flexible about what it can bring back, unlike most reanimation type effects. Then if you manage to transform it, it's pretty insane, as it offers your board a massive boost, and even if you don't have an impressive board, it can help you get there by churning out spirit tokens. It's been played in standard Orzhov mid-range decks, but it's been more successful in Pioneer, where it's played in Fires of Invention. That deck runs tons of powerful permanents that opponents like to destroy, including Fires, and the Invasion's ability to get it back is pretty nice, especially because it has additional upside. If you already have Fires in play, it might just be able to reanimate your Atraxa. Invasion of Tolvada is likely to gain more points in the future. At number 9, it's Invasion of Asgol. It costs a black and a red, and it has 4 defense, and when it enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker and loses 1 life. Once its defense is 0, it transforms into Ashen Reaper, a 2/1 with Menace that gains a +1/+1 counter at your instep if a permanent was put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn. Obviously, this means if you can transform it the turn you play it, it's going to get that counter. This battle is super cheap, and the fact that it is removal up front is great, especially because the creature you can get out of it is definitely a problem for your opponent. It's gained points in Pioneer Rakdos mid-range decks, but it's found the most success in Modern, where it's seen occasional play in Rakdos scam decks. In that deck, you can use it as removal, but you sometimes use it to kill your own Grief or Fury, and you use Feign Death or Undying Malice to bring them back and get those powerful Into the Battlefield abilities again. The deck was recently weakened by the banning of Fury, of course, and since then the Invasion hasn't gained any more points in Modern, and it doesn't have any points anywhere so far in 2024, but it's efficient enough that I don't think we can count it out entirely. At number 8, I have Invasion of Ikoria. For X and 2 green, it has 6 defense, and when it enters the battlefield, you search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less, and you can put it directly on the battlefield. While this invasion will never feel super efficient, tutoring up creatures directly to the battlefield is pretty strong and flexible, and unlike most versions of this effect, it can even get a creature back from the graveyard. After you lower its defense to 0, you can cast it as Zalortha, Apex of Ikoria, an 8/8 with reach that can allow your non-human creatures, including itself, to deal combat damage as if it weren't blocked. That's quite an imposing creature, especially because when it turns sideways, it will do 8 to your opponent no matter how they block. In Standard, it's been played in Ban Aggro. In Pioneer, it's been played in Devotion to Green decks, where it can perform double duty. Not only does it increase your Devotion to Green by 2, it also gives you something to sink mana into with Nykthos. This deck was recently weakened by the banning of Karn the Great Creator though, and it hasn't gained points in that format since then. In Modern, it's found some success in Death's Shadow decks, where it can easily tutor up the deck's eponymous creature. And in Legacy, its 1 point has come in a Dark Depths combo deck, where it can be used to tutor up Vampire Hexmage, which can give you your Merit Lage token right away. Alternatively, if you're missing Dark Depths, you can also use the Hexmage to remove all of the defense counters from the invasion and get Zalortha right away. This is more or less a 1-card combo. Tutoring up creatures directly to the battlefield is a big deal, and it's the kind of effect that will allow this battle to continue to see play in multiple formats going forward. At number 7, it's Invasion of Ergamon. For a red and a green, it's a 5 defense battle, and when it enters the battlefield, it makes a treasure token, and then you can discard a card. If you do, you draw a card. Once you get rid of those defense counters, you can cast it as Truga Cliff Charger, a 3/4 with trample, and when it enters the battlefield, you can discard a card, and if you do, you can tutor up a land or a battle. Getting all of that for only 2 mana is great, especially because you get a rebate on 1 mana right away thanks to the treasure it gives you. It can also tutor up any land, which is always quite nice. It's gained most of its points in modern Indomitable Creativity decks, which look to use creativity to cheat huge threats into play like Atraxa or Archon of Cruelty. It pulls this off by not running any actual creatures or artifacts, and instead targeting tokens with creativity. When you do this, you get your big threats 100% of the time. Invasion of Ergamon gives you a treasure token while digging you deeper in your deck, which means you're more likely to cast creativity in the near future, and you can of course target the treasure with it. Invasion of Ergamon is likely to gain more points in Modern in the future. At number 6, it's Invasion of Alara. For 1 mana of each color, it's a 7 loyalty battle, and when it enters the battlefield, you exile cards from the top of your library until you hit 2 non-land cards with a mana value of 4 or less. Then you can cast one of those for free and put the other in your hand. Once it's out of defense, you can cast Awaken the Maelstrom, a sorcery that does a whole bunch of stuff, and it should, since casting Invasion of Alara isn't easy, and 7 defense is a lot. The Maelstrom draws you 2 cards, and then you can put an artifact from your hand on the battlefield, then you get a token copy of a permanent you control, then you get 3+ and +1 counters distributed however you want, and then you destroy an opposing permanent. All of this battle's points have come in standard 5-color control decks which are fully capable of casting it and enjoying all of the insane value it can give you. It's likely to gain more points in standard in the future. At number 5, it's Invasion of Amonkhet. For 1 generic, a blue, and a black, it's a 4 defense battle, and when it enters the battlefield, each player mills 3, then each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. That's a 2-for-1 up front. Then, when you lower its defense to 0, you can cast Lazotep Convert, a 4/4 that enters the battlefield as a copy of a creature card in any graveyard except it's still a 4/4 zombie. Obviously, the battle side helps set that up between the mill and discard effects. It's been played in standard blue-black aggro decks which run lots of disruptive creatures, and Invasion of Amonkhet can really fit the bill there. In Pioneer, it's been played in Dimir Rogues, which feature a heavy mill theme to power up cards like Soaring Thought Thief. Invasion of Amonkhet looks likely to continue to gain points in the future. At number 4, it's Invasion of Ixalan, the 3rd 2-mana battle to make the list. For 1 generic and a green, it's got 4 defense, and when it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 5 cards and reveal a permanent from among them and put it into your hand. Once you lower its defense to 0, you can cast it as Belligerent Regisaur, a 4/3 that becomes indestructible until end of turn whenever you cast a non-creature spell. So, this gives you some decent card selection up front and has the ability to become a highly problematic creature. This is another green battle that has seen play in devotion to green decks. Invasion of Ixalan can help you find Nykthos and or cards that will rapidly raise your devotion and or your win condition in Karn the Great Creator, all while adding 1 to your devotion on its own. Since the banning of Karn though, Invasion of Ixalan doesn't have a home in any format. At number 3, it's Invasion of Tarkir, yet another 2-mana battle. For 1 generic and a red, it's a 5 defense battle, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals X plus 2 damage to any other target, where X is 2 plus the number of dragons in your hand you reveal. This means the baseline of this card is a medium removal spell, and it has big upside. Once you lower its defense to 0, you can cast it as Defiant Thundermaw, a 4/4 with flying and trample, and whenever a dragon you control attacks, including itself, it does 2 damage to any target. It's found the most success in standard red deck wins. That's a mono-red aggro deck that also uses Burn to help finish off the opponent. The deck also runs Shivan Devastator, so the invasion doing 3 is a pretty common occurrence. It's seen more sporadic play in Modern and Legacy, in 5-color aggro decks in the former, where Scion of Draco can make the invasion more potent, and in Legacy it's played alongside Murktide Regent. This battle looks incredibly well positioned to keep gaining points in multiple formats, and it has a chance to eventually come out on top, but the two battles in front of it aren't exactly idle either. At number 2, it's Invasion of Zendikar. For 3 generic and a green, it's a 3 defense battle, and when it enters the battlefield, you search up 2 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. In the past, we've seen cards that just had this effect play pretty well in Standard, like Explosive Vegetation, so that's a pretty good starting point, since this has really low defense, and once it's gone, you can cast it as Awakened Skyclave, a 4/4 with Vigilance and Haste that counts as a land and can tap for 1 mana of any color. It's gained all of its points in 5-color control decks in Standard. These decks are about ramping and getting domain high as quickly as possible so that Herd Migration makes 5 tokens, at which point your opponent is very unlikely to win the game. The invasion helps you get there and can let you cast the migration on turn 5 pretty consistently. It's going to keep gaining points in Standard. And at number 1, it's Invasion of Gobakhan, the 5th 2-mana battle on the list. I think it's safe to say when you make a battle this cheap, you're going to end up with a fairly powerful card since battles are inherently full of value. Anyway, for 1 generic and a white, this battle has 3 defense, and when it enters the battlefield, you look at your opponent's hand and exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card is in exile, your opponent can play it, but they have to pay 2 generic extra mana. This is a pretty powerful disruptive effect for white decks. While it may not get rid of a card entirely, it does disrupt your opponent's entire game plan in most cases and really slows them down, and that might give you the time you need to lower its defense to 0, at which point you cast it as Light Shield Array, an enchantment that puts a +1/+1 counter on each of your creatures that attacked in a turn, and if you got this battle's defense to 0, you probably attacked with some stuff, so it's going to offer the buff right away in most cases. You can also sacrifice it to have creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Invasion of Gobakhan has seen heavy play in Standard and Pioneer white aggro decks, since it's pretty amazing against sweepers, which are often the bane of aggro decks. First, it makes it harder for them to cast them. Second, once it's an enchantment, it can let your board ignore them. Invasion of Gobakhan is going to keep gaining points in Standard and Pioneer, and I think it's likely to remain the number 1 battle for the foreseeable future. So those are the top 10 battles in Magic. If you're interested in going into battle, check out the description where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each card that appeared in this video. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to stay aware of future videos, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to catch up on the more than 700 other MTG top 10s, including others that look at card types, you should see a playlist on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.